Now, we would like to move on to the panel discussions titled Frontier of Climate Action 2019. It is divided into 3 parts. First, a panel discussion is titled Frontier of Decarbonizing Business. We will have investors as well as representatives of companies. And the second panel discussion is titled New Phase in Expansion of Renewable Energies. We will invite representatives of businesses as well as investors. And the third panel discussion is titled Realizing Zero Emission from Local Communities. We have representatives from businesses as well as representatives from local governments and a representative from a fund. So in each panel, we have an investor, someone involved in the investment. So we will have 3 discussions. And CDP Japan is serving as the secretariat of JCI. And they came up with this the structure of the panel discussions. And there will be moderators assigned for each panel discussion. So we would like to start the first panel discussion titled Frontier of Decarbonizing Business. So panelists, please come up to the stage. Panelists, I would like to introduce the panelists. We have Mr. Ueyama from Kao Corporation. We have Ohmi-san from Amundi, Japan. We have Takahashi-san from Konica Minolta Holdings and Mr. Nomura-san from Kirin Holdings. So in this session, now that the businesses around the world are shifting gears towards decarbonization and taking concrete actions, in this session we would like to discuss what Japanese companies can do to show their presence to the world again. And I would like the panelists to share with us efforts made by each company and how investors are evaluating the activities of those companies. So the title of the panel discussion is Frontier of Decarbonizing Business. So it's a lot of work. I would now like to, first of all, ask Mr. Takahashi to explain the efforts made by the company on the area of decarbonization. It seems as though that he has some slides that he would like to share with you. Thank you. This is what we regard as carbon negative by Konica Minolta. We have scopes 1, 2, 3. By 2050, we would like to reduce CO2 emission by 80%. And the CO2, the amount that can be absorbed by the nature and the increase of emission caused by increase in population, we can only reduce 1.24 tons. So therefore, we need to reduce the emission by 80% by 2050. And in response to the Paris Agreement in 2030, 60% reduction, which is a science-based target. And in our midterm plan, we are working to reduce 50% by 2015. And we joined TCFD last year, and we are managing the targets. The uniqueness of the company is shown on the slide. This is outside scope 1, 2, or 3. The CO2 reduction made by the customers, if we support that, it will be outside the scopes 1, 2, 3, and 3, which means that's going to have a negative impact. So if we provide support to the customers with their CO2 reduction activities. So by having Konica Minolta present on the Earth, we'll be able to reduce CO2 emission on the Earth. Amazing. It's not carbon zero, but rather it's carbon negative. That is what you're claiming. At what level in your company was it decided? In 2009, when we decided on 80% reduction, it was approved by the board. Of course, SBD and TCFD management level made the approval. And I make monthly reports on the environment to the board. Thank you. I would like to ask Nomura-san on the activities made by Kirin for decarbonization. Can you show us the slide?
Thank you. Nomura speaking. At the Kirin Group, global warming, biodiversity, packaging, water resources. These are the 4 topics that we include in our environmental report about climate change by 2050 in the value chain. GHG emission should be reduced to the absorbable level by the planet. From short-term to mid-term to the see-through commitment, we have these integrated, and we are committed to realizing our goals. Regarding climate change, in 2017, we have been accredited by SBT. By 2018, we have endorsed, approved the TCFD. For both of the frameworks in the food industry in Japan, we were the first to do so, ahead of our peer in the industry and sectors, to announce that we are committed ahead of our peers. That would stimulate our peers and competitors, and then we, I think, can encourage and stimulate the participation by businesses in all the other sectors that could lead to the whole of our country going into the same direction. The slide shows the scenario analysis of TCFD. This is included in our Kirin Group environmental report. We are going to be as open as possible to disclose as much as possible for your information. As for approving the TCFD, in Japan, many non-financial industry are joining, but all the industry should work in solidarity. If that is done, then once again, the presence of Japan might be revived. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You just told us that it is available in the environmental report. This slide is rather difficult to see, so please refer to the report. Ueyama-san, your company, Kao Corporation, can you explain the initiatives?
First of all, I would like to touch upon our overall strategy. In April this year, we would like to help customers realize self-fulfilling lifestyle, curate lifestyle plan. We want to help customers realize self-fulfilling life to the globe and to the society. What are the actions that Kao is going to take? And of course, decarbonization is one of the important actions that we have included in that. KPIs for decarbonization, specifically by 2030, compared to 2017, we will reduce CO2 emissions by 22% in absolute terms. We need to be below 2 degrees Celsius, and so this is based on science, and more specifically, CO2 emissions for the plants by 2030 on a global basis. All the energy that we use on purchasing will be turned to renewables. And so here in Japan, the plants are using renewables for purchasing purposes 100%. And sourcing and customer product use, these are the areas where emissions are largest for us. So together with the stakeholders, we have to take joint action, and we've started that since 2009. CO2 emissions. We try to source materials that emit the least CO2 emissions. The amount of hot water, water used on washing machines, we are providing products that's conducive to minimize resource use by a customer. And TCFD, in March last year, we expressed our endorsement support for that. And climate change, of course, could be a business risk, but conversely put, by leveraging our technology, if we can contribute to reducing CO2 emissions, then that could be a major opportunity for us. So with our unique scenario analysis, we're trying to formulate our strategy going forward. This year, we have made an announcement on qualitative aspects so that by next year and onward, inclusive of financial data, we would like to announce financial data to suggest what we can do. Thank you.
Amundi, I think many of you know, but it's an investment company in France. In Ohmi-san's company, you are doing a lot of business in Japan as well. Can you explain your initiatives?
At Amundi, the start point is our investees. There's more than 8,000, and from ESG perspective, there is assessment and evaluation. Within the ESG, the E, the part of the environment, it is closely related to climate change. For example, the efforts towards reducing the emission or activities in green business. These parts are what we evaluate. On a global basis, there is comparison between the competition in the same sector. This will be incorporated into all our investment. This policy was announced last year, and we are working on this approach. So when investment is made, these activities are going to be fully reflected. On top of that, energy transition, energy transformation has to be promoted. Green finance is what we're going to be very positive. Different investment solutions are under development, like a low carbon index linked equities. Passive investment is one possibility, and proactive companies in green technology could be selected. So that is kind of active selections of equities. And in the fixed income, the CDP Japan, they are assessing the efforts of dealing with climate change. We are borrowing that scores, and the global leading proactive companies can be selected for investment. That kind of fund, which is called Climate Action Fund, together with SMBC, we are going to offer this investment opportunity. That is the possibilities to deal with climate. About the green bond in the emerging markets, to promote the issuance, together with IFC, International Finance Corporation, Green Bond Fund has been launched. This is the world first green bond fund in the emerging market. 150 billion was collected, and therefore as a green bond fund, it has become one of the largest in the world, or almost the largest. So we are promoting green finance in many ways.
Thank you very much. So even in Japan, the such kind of fund is already being sold. That is a kind of information I wouldn't know unless I'm involved. I'm hoping that such initiative would expand in the future. So when you made your announcements on those initiatives, how did the investors and the stakeholders react? So can you explain, Ueyama-san?
To the extent possible, KPIs we set as much as possible, and we indicate specific actions that we are taking in our reports, and that is highly evaluated by investors and stakeholders. The point here is that business partners that we work with to develop products or suppliers of energy, including power, we may have to ask for them to take on a lot of burden. But with our initiatives, we want them to understand our philosophy. And once they do so, I think we've been able to implement something that is very good. So to the business partners, I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude for their cooperation. And through technology, we try to solve decarbonization, so sustainable products, decarbonization for that purpose. So we're using power from renewables, and we're getting a lot of attention from mass media. We try to share as much information as possible whenever they come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would now like to ask Takahashi-san. How did the stakeholders, investors react? In January, we decided to participate in RE100. The first response came from our subsidiary in Europe, a sales company. They really appreciate the fact that we joined. And they said that they would be able to appeal approach to their customers. And last week, we had a small meeting with the investors, and for overall, we talked about overall ESG. But one of the requests that they mentioned was that there's a need to learn more about TFCD. We are providing report in our integrated report, and they want to know more about or learn together about TFCD. So I believe this is something that we need to work together with the investor. That's amazing. The customer would come to you saying that they appreciate your commitment. That was I'm sure that you were very happy. What about you, Nomura-san?
At the Kirin Group, in our environmental report of 2018, the TCFD scenario analysis has been reported. This was still at the trial pilot basis. We presented the physical risks expected. We believe that it must be robust information. We should only disclose robust information, and endorsing approving TCFD, we thought that there must be a very high robustness or accuracy about our information. But once we disclosed in 2018, they approached us, and you can already endorse approved TCFD. We were encouraged to be quick, so we can work on the disclosure step by step, but we can continue to improve our disclosure, and that is why we approved TCFD. For the 2019 report for this year, the scenario analysis was further developed. The opportunity and the risks were analyzed under what scenario we ought to manage our company. We have gone into further in-depth analysis. We are very happy about the positive reaction, not only the investors, but other businesses, and there has been inquiries by government authorities, and at investor meetings. Just like at what Mr. Takahashi mentioned, there is an interest about TCFD because we explained, and going forward, we have been asked how we can encourage other companies to do the same, to disclose in terms of following TCFD. There are increasing inquiries. But there are not too much scenario analysis. We are still groping through the dark, going through trials and errors. So whatever we learn, we are happy to disclose. And after doing the scenario analysis, it is more important after the analysis. So we are engaging with the investors, and we are going to do whatever we can step by step.
Thank you very much. Being committed, I believe, is very important, which will be evaluated by the investors, I believe. So from the investors' perspective, the initiatives made by different companies, how are they evaluated for each sector? How do you evaluate the initiatives of different companies? Can you explain, Ohmi-san?
The companies right here with me, the members here are the leading companies. From a global perspective, the companies here on the stage are very highly evaluated across the world. The management commitment, long-term perspective, vision, those are very important. And then these have to be all factored into the management strategy and be implemented. That is the most important point for investors. As was introduced, for example, in the case of Konica, not only developing green products, but you are promoting green factories and green suppliers and marketing. So at all levels of the stakeholders, you are proactive in going green. And that's a point to focus. In the case of Kao, the consumers are engaged in order to promote sustainable lifestyle. So this is a kind of a very broad, extensive project which we highly appreciate. And of course, Kirin, about the TCFD disclosure, about the physical risk, your disclosure is of a very high quality. Of course, TCFD is important, but what is the long-term risks embedded in the company? Physical risks, difficult to assess and forecast. That is why we depend on corporate disclosure. I have looked at your documents. we are studying your document and disclosure, and then we are interested in what actions companies are going to take. That is what we talk about in our engagement.
Thank you very much. So the speakers who are on the stage now, they are the representatives of leading companies. So within your sectors, you are the leaders, I believe. So having leaders mean that there are other companies in the sector that they will be learning from the leaders, including supply chain. The risk management are being considered. Last year, the Kansai International Airport was flooded, and it was not possible to use the airport for a period of time. We have been hit by large-scale typhoons, and we are feeling that there is an ongoing climate change. And I would like to know if you're changing the business strategies. And I would first of all like to ask Nomura-san.
By climate change, there are extensive impacts. Every day we are feeling that, day by day. Even doing scenario analysis, that is very clear. For the entire value chain, climate change does have a huge impact. We are aware about that. Our products, of course, biological resources and waters are the core raw materials, but again, climate does have a huge impact on our ingredients. For example, the tea leaves, mainly procured from Sri Lanka. We procure Sri Lanka tea leaves, and the tea farm must become sustainable. Rainforest Alliance certification is supported by ourselves. That's one example. It is from the highlands that we acquire. In terms of water risk assessment, it is a moderate risk because it is in the highland, but the impact by the climate, there could be drought, lack of water unexpectedly. We are now aware that that could happen. And in the upstream, the water supply for entire Sri Lanka, the water source, the conservation of the origin of the water source, we are also working on that so that our tea farm will be sustainable. To the residents of Sri Lanka, we are trying to raise awareness by education program about the value of water. We are using papers and FSC certification. Going forward, there could be restrictions on the supplies, the Forestry Stewardship Council certification, but we have to contract early because we use it for packaging. So that's an opportunity and a risk at the same time in terms of a packaging raw material. About barley, it is also subject to big impact. Having said that, by technology, we do have the technology to produce a beer tasting drink that does not use barley. In that way, we are trying to avoid the risk of lack of barley in the downstream. So far, traditionally, for the purpose of reducing emission, railway or ship transportation modal shift was what we had done. But last year we experienced a mass flooding in Western Japan. Our distribution net was cut off. We could not transport our product. And we had to learn that this was another important impact of climate change. We thought carefully, and it's about BCP continuation. The prioritization were reviewed once again after last year's West Japan massive rain. In addition to that, in particular, distribution logistics, it is an area for coordination, not competition. So with our peers in the same sector and industry, co-distribution, tested co-logistics, we are working together rather than competing.
Thank you very much. So you are there is a need to change the distribution in response to climate change, which is part of your strategy. I believe that is very important. What about you, Takahashi-san? Issues related to supply chain is extremely important for our business. We are producing and manufacturing multifunctional printers. We have the machine, we have the product, and we have supplies like toners and also solution. We have 2 million customers around the world, and the biggest problem will be when we will not be able to supply toners to our customers, which means that would stop the work done by our customers. So a disruption of a supply chain is going to cause a major problem. And this is something that we need to expect to happen because of the climate change. We need to think about distributed production and distributed distribution. And we need to strengthen our supply chain as well, which means that digital manufacturing is already in a production process, which is not, it is to be adopted not only in our factories, but we need to work together with the suppliers to, we are structuring our digital manufacturing together with suppliers. In Malaysia, we have created a smart industrial center, procurement data, quality data being captured right away, and we are tracking our production and distribution on a daily basis. You are working together with the suppliers, and we are doing distributed procurement, which are part of your business strategy. What about you, Ueyama-san? I've been doing management of the supply chain for a long period of time. Can you explain?
Since 2009, climate change, forestry and water, we view them as sources of materials from the environment. And from the viewpoint of value chain, we've been taking action. So we're not changing our strategy. We've been doing this since 2009. But in terms of sourcing and through our collaboration with suppliers, we would like to continue to reduce risks, material suppliers, so that they can provide us with materials with less CO2 emissions. CDP has a supply management program. Using that, we try to educate, enlighten them so that the baseline can be raised. In the last few years, I think we've been able to see very good results. And the water problem of water, this leads to CO2 emissions, of course. Within our supply chain, well, water use, 90% of that comes from customer use. So with technology innovation, cleaning, washing, so rinsing water can be cut down when clothes are washed, and we provide products that help them do that. So by creating value for the customer, we would like to tackle this. And forestry, of course, is a huge issue. What is important for us is palm oil. And we're focusing on reducing risk there. For almost all the consumer products, RSP certified, most of them. But for small farmers, traceability, well, we're focusing on that so we can track what they're doing and what their status is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But when you say forest, generally speaking, many people think about planting trees, but worldwide, there is issues related to forest. To produce palm oil, people are cutting down trees. So with regards to palm oil, where they come from is going to become more important. So you're working on traceability, which was just explained. Ohmi-san, because of climate change, changes in investment, changes in valuation of companies, I believe that you're engaged in evaluating companies on their initiatives on climate change. Have there been any changes on how you evaluate those companies, and what is your focus?
Traditionally, regarding climate change, we already considered a serious risk, and therefore we have been assessing the corporate activities. So regarding the framework, because of the recent extreme weathers, we have not suddenly changed our assessment framework, but in many ways, there are so much physical risks, and the risks and dangers are intensifying recently in Japan. Therefore, following the TCFD recommendations, if there are more disclosures by the businesses, there will be enhanced dialogue and engagement. In the engagement, what the companies are doing in terms of their strategy regarding the identified risks, those have to be shared, which we believe is increasingly important. In the long-term strategies, there could be innovation and many other changes, fundamental change in corporate management approaches will be required. Then what can finance do? What is the role of finance? So green finance, when there are major changes in business model which requires big investment, we are preparing ourselves to finance. The Japanese financial industry has to be prepared for this, and therefore a huge innovation is required on the financial industry side.
Thank you very much. Dialogue between investors and companies. I believe that there's been an increase in the number of dialogues held. Since you're making investment in that company, you want to have a dialogue and you want to know more about the company, or you're already making investments in that company, so you would like to have a dialogue. And doing engagements means that you are the scope of the investment made by the investor. Something is being said by the investors. It used to be a major problem for the companies. But if investors say nothing about the company, it is more of a bigger problem. Investors say things to the companies because they have high expectations. And I think companies need to be sincere to listen to comments made by investors. And I'm happy to see that there's been increase in such kind of dialogues between investors and companies. People are talking about reduction before 2030 and zero emission by 2050. All of these have been recommended by IPCC. In 2030 and 2050, what kind of business entities do you think you will become? I believe that there is a possibility that the business models of the companies will change. So can you give us your comments on that, starting with Nomura-san?
The IPCC special report, numerous risks were outlined, but our core business is beer production. The raw material is critical for us. So going forward, to keep it to 1.5 degrees, what Kirin can do, and in the value chain, our location of sourcing, how we can optimize the selection, we have to think even more carefully. Our long-term environmental vision, the CSV commitment, we are under review of such long-term strategies. By 2050, for the whole value chain, it must be entirely sustainable as a company as a whole. That is our wish and vision. It's not only beer that we do, because our portfolio is under transformation. So from medicine to food, health is what we are expanding our efforts over. Within the IPCC special report, infectious disease, contagious disease risks, towards such a risk to protect our health, we must look about plasma lactic acid bacteria, for example, which is useful for prevention. We have embarked on such development. Those are fresh business opportunities for ourselves.
In addition to beer business, you are expanding, you are exploring different business opportunities. Takahashi-san, what about you? As of today, our focus is on MFPs. So we are using a lot of paper in our business, but there is an ongoing shift to paperless. So what we are trying to target is to become digital company, providing solutions to the companies. So we would like to change the way people work around the world using digital. We would like to shift to paperless and then to create a working style, a work style that is rewarding for the workers. And we would like to realize that through digitalization. So we will continue to be a manufacturer, but unlike before, we won't be generating profit by selling a lot of products, but rather we would like to we would do edge computing, capture data from edge, and instead of using huge data like big data, we would like to efficiently utilize the data to change the way people work. And by doing so, we would like to transform into a business with less environmental load. Thank you very much. So many companies are looking for different new business opportunities, and companies need to consider how they can change their business model. I think that was a good, useful information for them. What about you, Yamamoto-san?
In the zero emission era, I think supply of materials made from oil will be very difficult. So bottles, plastic containers, they will no longer be available or difficult to procure and use. So we need to recycle them and create a circular society. So traditionally, we looked only at our products, but we also need to look at plastics used around our products and recycle them. We need to promote our business from that perspective. And through technological innovation, we want to offer new value. That stance remains unchanged, but technology innovation in the earlier phase, new features would attract a lot of attention. It's the same with every area, but toward 2030, 2050, from early on in the early stages of technology innovation, we have to consider societal impact and negative impact as we try to promote it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are running out of time, so I would like to ask the panelists my last question. As you push with decarbonization, from your perspectives, can you tell us what you would like the representative of different companies who are here today to do right away?
To start right away today, global investors are deeply interested in how companies are responding to climate changes. I want to emphasize this. So please do take back this message to your businesses that what you are doing or not doing are attracting attention. Whatever you can do, please disclose what you are doing. To the extent possible, please do disclose what you are doing. That will be the start point. Through engagement and dialogue, the need for more activities can be learned, and that should be communicated to the top, and companies can change for the better. So please do disseminate what you've heard here at the panel.
Thank you very much. What about you, Ueyama-san?
Rather than thinking decarbonization is something negative, it's an opportunity for us to change our ways and grow anew. So I think we need to look at it very positively, decarbonization, as is mentioned. And as was said by the panelists, there are so many good practices and technologies offered by Japan. We can combine them and communicate them to the world and create new trends. Those represented here from the Japanese corporate sector, they're also consumers. We're also consumers, residents. So even in small ways, we need to do the right thing, make the right choices, inclusive of myself. That is important. So the right choice by each individual will lead to decarbonized society. I think we can create a momentum.
Thank you very much. In response to those voices, policies can become more proactive, I think. What about Takahashi-san? 10 years ago, we set a target of 10% reduction, and we are about to achieve the target of 50% reduction. And 10 years ago, if we didn't set the target of 80% reduction, we would never have been able to achieve the target of 50% reduction. So not to stick to short-term plans, but rather have long-term vision, set a long-term target, come up with different ideas to try to solve and achieve the target. I think we should change or switch to that type of style. So companies would come up with the future targets, and towards the target, they need to start thinking. So you set the target of 80% reduction in the past. Because you set the target before, you've been able to achieve a reduction of 50%. So there's a journey, and it takes time. So Nomura-san, please.
Certainly, there is not much that one single company like ourselves can do. As I mentioned, over the value chain, we have to work together, or for the country of Japan as a whole. Each of the companies should understand the importance, and each of the companies should raise their voice, in particular about the renewables here in Japan. A certain level of investment is required, and of course that could entail some costs and expenses, but there must be awareness about the importance. If all the companies start working in the correct direction, it will be reflected in the policies, and it could lead to a bigger innovation, and it could be a virtuous cycle to further promotion of this endeavor. So we would like to work together. We want to appeal to the younger generation. We want to pass on our beautiful blue planet to the future generations. With a strong will, we want to work together with all of you.
Thank you very much. Our next, I think that was a very good discussion that would lead to a new phase in expansion of renewable energy. I would like to hand over to Ishida-san. A big round of applause to our panelists, please. Thank you very much.
Morisawa-san,
panelists, thank you very much. Now we would like to move on to our second panel discussions, new phase in expansion for renewable energy. Panelists, please come onto the stage.
My name is Masa Ishida from REI. I have the pleasure of serving as the moderator.
気候変動はもう待ったなしの状況にあるというのはもう今まで
Climate change is an urgent issue. We cannot afford to wait to take action. Both corporations and local governments, municipalities are called for to take action right away. And there are two ways to address this. One is energy conservation, energy efficiency enhancement, and second, use of renewables, which do not emit CO2. So please be seated. So in the next panel discussion, use of renewables. We have shifted to a phase where we actually start to use renewables rather than just discussing them. So let's start. Thank you. So first of all, I would like to introduce the panelists. From the person next to me, Ms. Kumiko Isono from Shizen Energy. Tokyo Metropolitan Government, Bureau of Environment, Mr. Kenji Ogawa. From Daiwa House Industry, Mr. Katsuhiro Koyama. From Daiichi Life Insurance Company, Ms. Miyuki Zenia. From Sony, Mr. Takeshi Tsuruta. So we have 5 members on the panel from which we will hear. First, from each panelist, we would like to hear about their organization's initiatives on the use of renewables, we're asking them to make a short presentation. 3 out of 5 are those who use energy. All 3 are part of RE100 to achieve 100% use of renewables. So, Koyama-san from Daiwa, if you could please start. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Koyama. Can we have the slide? Thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this panel. I've been looking forward to having discussions with you. First, for expanding the use of renewables, what are we doing? So RE100, where we create and we aim at achieving 100% use, and together with customers, we collaborate to achieve renewables 100%, especially in the community. As you know, here in Japan, the use of renewables is still limited, and so creating renewables ourselves, we focus on that so that we can contribute to the use of renewables to achieve RE100. As you can see from the graph, we're in the expansion phase. By 2030, by utilizing FIT, we would like to increase the number of houses that's built on renewable energy. By 2030, we would like to increase the use of renewables so that it would exceed the use of power at a corporation. After that, I'm sure the use will have expanded. And so 2030 and onward, we would like to switch over to self-consumption and achieve RE100 in the subsequent years. Ever since we became a member of RE100, I think this line graph has become steeper. We're accelerating efforts. As of end of last year, 85% of power that we use is based on renewables. We have come thus far. So 2030, 100%. That's our target. I think we can achieve that earlier than scheduled in the next several years. So RE100 for a company alone, it's going to be just a small portion of what can be done on a nationwide basis. So by leveraging expertise in our core business, we would like to help build a community that uses 100% renewables together with our customers. Compact cities are a viable concept, as is on the right-hand side. So housing as well as commercial districts exist side by side in a compact city. And zero energy housing, zero energy construction, we've been promoting that all along. On the left-hand side, we sell energy through FIT. Construction and power sales were independent, but through non-fossil certification, a trading market with that program in place, we are able to sell, and we have now obtained a license as a power retailer. And we are providing the electricity that we generate. And soon, a community running on power, including the one that's created by us, will be up and running. So from construction to consumption, 100% renewables. And this has just begun, but this is a model, and we would like to expand this nationwide. That's all. Thank you. So through community building like this, well, if the number of communities with high awareness on environment increases, that would be wonderful. I hope you will go on to the second and the third project. Tsuruta-san from Sony.
Thank you. If I may, this is about how Sony is utilizing renewables. In the case of Sony, the use of renewables, last year we joined RE100, but even before that, from long before that, we have been proactive. And we were one of the first Japanese businesses to introduce and apply for certification of renewables. Already in our operations in Europe, 100% renewable-based operation has been implemented. About the semiconductor plants in Japan, there is a large-scale increase of energy consumption expected going forward. But after joining RE100, would it be viable for us? Before we decided to join, we did have some concern, but we decided to be bold and ambitious. The top management okayed. As of September, we managed to join RE100. More recent development inside Japan in Kumamoto, the semiconductor factory, or outside of Japan in Thailand in our factories at megawatt scale solar panels installation have been conducted. As for future prospects, in the United States, we have Sony Pictures Entertainment. A solar panel of a megawatt scale shall be installed. Or in Australia, we do have disc factories. A megawatt level solar panels shall be made. So on the rooftop of our facilities, solar panels are being installed. In addition to that, we wish to develop new markets, and therefore for the first time we have a self-tolling system of renewables. Finally, we have managed to develop this. What do I mean? In Shizuoka, there are two operations related to music. One is a warehouse. In the case of warehouses, the roof is a bigger area. The energy consumption not that large, but the rooftop is large. By installing solar top panels, it is more than enough for the warehouse. But close to that, there is another disc production factory not too far away. The roof is not large, but because it is manufacturing site, a lot of energy is consumed. Chubu Electric Company, a grid we have accessed, and from the warehouse, the excess power generated is now transferred to be consumed at our second plant of disc production. There were a bit of challenges because of system difficulties, but we have managed to do that with Chubu Electric Company. So those are some recent activities, and going forward, we want to expand the use of renewables.
Thank you. So solar power generation, what is excess? You are wheeling, and I think that's a first in Japan. I'm sure it's attracting a lot of attention from peers in your industry. The concern is because it uses transmission cables, wheeling cost is incurred. So what is the cost arrangement? I do get that question from time to time. So to the extent that you can share, if you could talk about that.
It depends on terms and conditions. I can't say that it's going to be cheap or expensive. However, looking at this successful case about the tolling or the access or the wheeling compared to that charge, because it is self-generated by solar panel on our rooftop, we did not need to purchase fresh energy. In terms of that balance, plus and minuses, it was sufficiently viable for us. But there was another case which ended up unsuccessful. Therefore, it really depends. It's not all going to make it cheap for us.
Thank you. Finally, solar power generation cost has come down. So if it's self-generation, it's cheaper today than buying. And Daiichi Life, Senya-san, as was mentioned by Mori-san, we have an investor on every panel. And so Daiichi Life is also an investor. What's your initiative?
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. And Daiwa and Sony compared to their initiatives. We joined RE100 the other day recently, so the activities, initiatives implemented as a business entity has just started. But up until today, as an investor, as Ohmi-san mentioned from Amundi, as an insurance company in Japan, we are investing in about 1,500 companies in Japan, and we are having dialogues with those companies. We are making requests to those companies as well. And while we do that, we cannot say we are not doing anything on our own. So in the case of life insurance company, we don't have manufacturing sites, but we do have offices in different parts of Japan, and we do have a certain number of employees. So we are implementing different initiatives. From April this year, all of the powers used in Hibiya head office, we switched to renewable energy. So this is something that we just started. So I'm not really sure if it's going to expand to other sites in Japan. We need to identify how effective that would be first before we roll out. The major focus is in the case of a life insurance company. When we are to be evaluated by for its ESG, I think the most important would be how much investment we have in the area of ESG. So this is not only limited to stocks, but in the case of life insurance companies, we have a large number of investments in bonds. So green bond, international bonds, and also Tokyo also issued a green bond 2 years ago. We made investments in that, and recently we are very much focusing on impact investments. And among the impact investment we have investments in Chalergy, which is not a listed company, but we do have investment in the company. And globally, we are involved in project finances as well. So dark red represent renewable energies projects. So we have about 180 billion yen in total invested in ESG thematic investment. We are participating in different initiatives in this area.
Thank you. So as an investor, you are recommending and promoting use of renewables in your investees, and you're setting your own example for that. Next, from Tokyo Metropolitan Government, Bureau of Environment, Ogawa-san, I would like to turn to you. Tokyo Metropolitan Government, since before, has been addressing cap and trading for CO2 emissions. You've been at the forefront of this effort. So, Ogawa-san, please.
Thank you. Ogawa from Environmental Bureau of TMG, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government. As of May of this year, within Tokyo, we organized the U20 Mayors Summit. The governor discussed about climate change and the threat and the risk. Because we are one of the largest cities that we have to commit to 1.5 by 2050, we are going to contribute to effective zero emission. And she announced the zero emission Tokyo. By the end of this year, a strategy for zero emission Tokyo is under development. In this new strategy, emission has to go down. That is the mitigation. And the heat, infectious diseases, flooding, all that have to be reduced by adaptation. So far, a focus was on building to use renewables and reduce energy consumption. On top of that, ZEB, the vehicles, zero-emission vehicles for our fleet, or reduce plastic use and other resources, or CO2 emission by way of using all the materials. The entire society has to be decarbonized. That is the new strategy to be developed before the end of this year. Flooding, life-threatening heat, all this unprecedented climate threat is becoming every day. Tokyo is a major city of the world. The asset lives of the people have to be protected. And therefore, the government will continue to be resilient and be attractive to businesses. And therefore, concrete actions will have to be implemented. That is our way of thinking. As for some specifics, In order to decarbonize, energy consumption has to be cut, needless to say, of course, but a transition to renewable is important. All of you here on the stage with me, I know you are active in RE100, but in the case of TMG government, we have a RE100 for a government building from August of this year in building number 1. All the power is now renewable. On the right-hand side, in June, there was the RE100 action meeting with the companies who have declared this is what we hosted. By taking this as a trigger, the Tokyo government will expand renewable power and will expand supply. We want to cause a movement. On the left-hand side bottom, there are 2 bullet points. Cap and trade is implemented, but the use of renewable under this scheme must be expanded, and in the area of urban planning system, the use of renewable expansion is mandated. We are preparing right at this moment from this fiscal year in the household. A group purchase of household model is under preparation so that multiple households can purchase together. We will introduce them as soon as we have the plan. This is my final slide. This is what we are reviewing at this moment. Going forward, there will be FIT graduation, so this would be an important renewable energy source in Tokyo, and this will be effectively utilized within the Tokyo Metropolitan Government facilities. So after graduation from FIT, this can be utilized in affiliated facilities. So RE100, the TMG version, shall be expanded, or DFIT, not only graduation, but to self-consume, self-generated power is what we mean by DFIT or leaving FIT. The typhoon has impacted us. We have lost power. In order to avoid this damage, autonomous self-generation is required. So by this kind of scheme after FIT, we will decarbonize in Tokyo as well as the entire country of Japan. In next fiscal year, we shall have all the detailed information, which we will make public. Thank you.
Thank you. Graduation from FIT, you may know, but for solar power generation for households, the program period is going to expire, and energy outside of the period will be purchased. And DFIT, the other one. Those who are not eligible for FIT, so needs self-generation. For example, you pay by yourself to generate power and use power. So FIT graduation, defitting, these are going to weigh very heavily. When will this happen?
As long as we budget, we shall have the dates. I'm wondering when? Around April? April or beyond?
Well, the message is we need to speed up. We need to be quicker. So I hope this will happen in April next year. We have people from the Tokyo Metropolitan Government. Isono-san from Shizen Energy. From the namesake of the company represented, it's a company that promotes natural energy, power generation, and retail they're engaged in. Please.
My name is Ono from Shizen Energy. Very nice to meet you. The company was established in 2011. Our business domain is everything about renewable. We started with project development. We create the power plant, and then we do the maintenance, EPC, and we also do asset management. And everything related to renewables we do. But what we need to focus on most is the supply side, responsibility as a supplier. I'm sorry, the slide is a little bit broken, but in our project development, 1 gigawatt worth of power plants we have been involved in. The keyword is additionality. People talk about additionality a lot these days. In the West, corporate PPA, alternative supply deal, when it's signed, behind there is the renewable is being born. So additionality is very important. And if we don't have additionality, people don't take you seriously. So we need to generate the additionality to the world. And to do that, we need to work on cost reduction. We need to work on the technology to make it safer, to create power plants that has a bigger capacity. And also to increase the number of power plants, we need to get the consensus of the community. All of those are the focus of our business. And other than that, what I just explained was the initiatives to increase renewables. But there are some other things that we do. For example, on the left-hand side of the slide, there is a project in Obuse town in Nagano Prefecture. Shizen Energy and Obuse City, as well as the cable company, are working together to create a joint venture called Nagano Denryoku, where small hydropower plants as well as rooftop power plants are combined to cover about 20% of power consumed in Obuse town. And we're working on the initiative to realize that. So people who would like to use renewables, how can they get the access, and how can we motivate the consumers to use renewables? That is something that we are working on today. And in summer, we had a G20 meeting, and in Karuizawa, there was the energy in G20 minister meeting on energy transition and global environment for sustainable growth. And we were able to supply CO2-free energy. And how are we going to increase the demand? We are struggling in that area. If it's just power, since power is invisible, and in our lives in Japan, if we just turn on the switch, the power is supplied. If you just plug in, you'll be able to enjoy power. But I think there's a need to think about the lifestyle. So we need to combine energy or power with other things to have the consumers start thinking about what it means to choose renewables. For example, I put a picture of vegetables because Shizen Energy, the renewables that we sell in a retail business, organic vegetable, we have a collaboration with the services of organic vegetables. Consumers who are concerned about the things that they eat, the things that they use, we would like those consumers to start thinking about the power that they consume as well. And this is related to another category, BPP, or usage of storage batteries, energy source other than power plants. How those are going to be utilized is a very important perspective. So TEPCO is doing a demonstration in aggregation experiment, and we are part of that initiative.
Thank you. Additionality, that concept that you mentioned. So by adding new renewable generation capacity, power generated out there that is supplied and can contribute to reducing a fossil fuel power, so that's effective. In the West, this has become an important requirement for sourcing renewables. Daiichi Life said that their office right now uses hydropower, but if it's an old plant, not much additionality. So I hope you will consider using power sources with additionality going forward. Let's move on to the next topic. Mr. Topping said in his keynote speech, even today, in terms of renewables and climate change, they consider those as priority issues for their businesses. Unless addressed, they would be in a very difficult situation, they realize. And I think we're seeing increased understanding of that here in Japan. So from the panelists on this panel, what are the changes happening in their businesses? And what are the changes are you expecting going forward? So in reverse order, Isono-san, please.
Yes. Investments in power plants. Since 2012, people are investing more in power plants. So it's more like how you use power. I get to talk with the consumers or customers, individuals, little by little. It is growing. So people get to see these things on the media, and we are seeing a lot of natural disasters. I think there is a momentum. But on the other hand, on the side of the business, our impression is that there is more to go. There is an issue of cost. And because of the current system, we still have FIT. So there is an increasing the use of FIT. So people, the panelists that we have today, are more advanced. So I've been looking forward to listening to their comments.
Thank you, Ogawa-san. Within Tokyo, there are lots of businesses. From the viewpoint of use of renewables, any changes you spot these days?
Last fiscal year, there was a reform of cap and trade. There was a one-year discussion. There were lots of opinions collected. In fall of this year, the operations are subject to this. We will do a questionnaire. We are compiling the outcomes. According to the responses, climate change SDG, in order to deal with ESG investment, that they are interested in renewable energy, or what can be done to expand the use of renewables, and the utilities. On the website, what is the source of power that they purchase? They are checking the utility. But there are voices saying that renewable is expensive. Could it not be more affordable? Or in terms of supply capacity, there is a concern that there is not enough if it is only renewables. By mid next month, we are going to compile all the survey results. It will be made public. And to the utilities, we wish to encourage them to provide more renewables. RE100 action meeting has been convened. I do observe momentum is rising.
Thank you, Daiichi Life. Zeniya-san. From the perspective of an investor, I'm sure you have a lot of relationships with the investees and borrowers. Any changes on their part?
Yes. A panelist in the previous panel discussions also mentioned this about our customers and the companies that we invest in. The global companies are already required to take actions to do business outside of Japan. But companies who only have presence in Japan, up until today, they do understand the need, but they were not really ready to take actions. And also the pricing. Pricing has not reversed just like other countries around the world. So we don't see a lot of progress. But as Morisawa-san mentioned earlier, because of the damages caused by typhoon, there's been a lot of damages caused by a number of typhoons. So therefore, from the perspective of infrastructure or BCP, many companies, there's been an increase in the number of companies becoming aware of the need. And the management, how they look at the risk management is extremely important for us. It's an important focus for us. So dialogue, TCFD disclosure. So to the companies that we talk with, we request the disclosure for TCFD. Many companies have already started, but we are asking for more information to be disclosed. Companies like Kirin disclosing a lot of information already, but I would like to. We are asking companies to refer to those companies to disclose more.
Thank you. Sony is a representative company here in Japan. Around the globe, you have lots of business partners. So what are the changes?
Indeed, exactly as you mentioned. In particular, the overseas stakeholders, our suppliers, our business partners, about the expansion of renewables, they are deeply interested in many ways. We hear their requests. We are responding to their inquiries. At the same time, inside Japan, after joining RE100, traditionally we purchased power from utilities, but we are now hearing new, fresh proposals related to renewables. I do feel the changing trend in the last 1 year or so. Not our direct business, but the younger generation are very sensitive, deeply interested into companies' approach. Therefore, as Sony, in the area of using more renewables, by making effort, we wish to attract quality employees from the younger generation. We want to contribute in our way.
Thank you. We've been hearing about TCFD. Disclosure of financial impact from climate change. That's what the initiative is. Together with risks, there are also business opportunities to be analyzed and disclosed as financial and non-financial information. So from that point of view, Daiwa Housing, Zero Energy Housing, Zero Energy Building, you have been expanding new frontiers as climate change proceeds. You're pretty active on that front. And I think you're benefiting most from TCFD. So comment on that, please. Thank you. Now that we're part of RE100, together with the members of RE100, we participate in study meetings, and members of RE100, their offices, their facilities, when they are constructed, they tell me that they want to have zero emission, and we're starting to get inquiries from the fellow members of RE100, fortunately. So this is having positive business impact. RE100 as a member, as I said, not just RE100 for ourselves alone, but we would like to build expertise from that and apply it elsewhere, outside of our company. So we would like to increase the number of fellow members and translate them into business opportunity as well. Thank you. So not just the companies represented here, but their business partners are distributed nationwide. So climate change initiatives, use of renewables, there are no longer issues just for large companies today. So in that regard, what we continue to hear is that renewables are still expensive, not easy to purchase. These are the challenges that we continue to hear in this country. Although there are such challenges, we have to start from where we can. So from your perspective, in terms of institutions, markets, or technologies, what are the challenges? How would you like to see them changed? Just briefly, in just a few words, please. So, as energy user, Tsuruda-san from Sony, and then Zenia-san, please.
About the first challenge, I mentioned about the self-wheeling or self-access, transferring our renewable from one plant to another. When we access the grid with our excess capacity, it must be balanced and it has to be reported. The supply-demand balancing, there must be no imbalance. That is the obligation. But about the institutional challenges, it is not easy to comply. It is not easy for one single company to access the grid, even if we do have excess capacity. About the transmission, I mean, this time in the case of Shizuoka, we were successful, but we do not succeed in smoothly accessing the grid in all of our plants. In order to overcome such institutional barriers, single company cannot do it alone. We have to work together with peers and competitors. It is a challenge that all of us have to look towards the same direction. It is not insurmountable, and therefore, in this kind of forum, we want to share the challenges and work together.
So you ask transmitters and power companies to be more flexible. Yes. Zenya-san?
We just started, but we start with big offices, and if we do that, we need to find a company that can supply a certain amount of power. And in terms of pricing, there is not much of an advantage compared to outside of Japan. So being offered with an incentive for us to do the transition. So we would like to have the related government agencies to consider.
Ogawa-san, from local government perspective?
On the short term, yes, of course, we need to support policies piece by piece, but there must be efforts for longer term effort. One is there is the grid capacity restriction, so self-generation, self-consumption has to be promoted, and the disposal of obsolete too old solar panels, we have to start a discussion. And the metropolitan government is also an operator, a business, so the government of Tokyo itself has to think about more use of renewables.
So from a supplier's point of view, Isono-san?
There are a lot of things, but investors in the plant, there is the lender, so therefore cost is an important issue. This is similar to what was mentioned earlier, but to be connected to the grid, who is going to bear the cost of the construction, and how can we simplify the environmental impact assessment on wind power? So I think we need to be flexible. And from a customer's perspective, to change the energy on its own is going to be very difficult. So we talk about the energy advantages and non-energy advantages. We need to combine energy with other things to provide a package of advantages. So in that case, we need to collaborate with different industries.
So when developing energy in the local community, that becomes an important issue. So Daiwa House is both a user and a supplier. So from that perspective, if you could please comment. Koyama-san, as I said at the outset, the total amount of renewables is not nearly enough. That is the fundamental problem. So spare capacity of transmission lines, because there's no spare capacity, no power there, and we can't develop. And TEPCO has started to look into that. Now we're starting to see practical discussions, and as a result, I hope that renewables will be carried by the grid more to make things better. And as we meet with our customers, we realize that when it comes to social benefits of renewables, they're not necessarily shared or felt by our customers. So inclusive of us, the business and the government, I think we need to raise our voices and increase awareness. Thank you. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. So before we conclude, just a few words from each of you. Outlook and expectations, your aspirations for renewables going forward. Tsuruta-san, in this order, please.
In the case of Japan, it is considered that we are lagging behind, but we have to recover our reputation. Within a few years, we want to be called #1 in this area. We will have to achieve that dream. Let us work together.
Same thing, really. Most of the solar panels are manufactured by Chinese manufacturers. We need to make sure that similar things wouldn't happen in the future. I'm sure seeds of innovation are hidden in each manufacturer, so we need to take this as an opportunity. Japan has experienced many natural disasters, and that is the reason why we'll be able to appeal to the world. And we would like to continue to make investments in that area.
RE100 was limited to large companies more or less, but RE Action, which is the SME version of RE100, we're on the executive board of that organization. So those of you who are here representing large companies, I hope you will consider being members of RE100. And for your business partners who are SMEs, please encourage them to become part of that SME organization. We hope to increase the momentum for the movement. Thank you very much.
I know that all of you are leading businesses here, so including local government authorities and the operators and the resident of Tokyo. All of us will have to pool our wisdom and be more active. This is the time to act. So TMG government will do all we can. We want to work with you. Thank you.
Our company, our vision is to create together the world of 100% renewables. So creating together is important for us. So concrete actions need to be implemented together with all of you. And we need to engage ourselves in the discussions to achieve our goal.
Thank you very much. We heard very powerful messages. With that, we would like to bring the second panel discussion to a close. Once again, please give them a big round of applause. Please return to your seats.
Next is the realizing the zero emission from the regions. WWF Japan, Ken Tanaka, will be the moderator. I hand over the microphone. Thank you, Tanaka, WWF Japan. We have heard from the two panels. By 2050, GAG emission zero has to be realized. The rise has to be stopped at 1.5. Long-term perspective has to be incorporated into business management, and the key would be the renewables. This has to be expanded as quickly as possible. In order to promote these activities, utilizing the characteristics of the local regions, efforts have to be made. So in this session, we have NPOs, local government authorities. We have panelists from different background. Can you change the lightings, please? Introducing the panelist from Kyoto City, Mr. Takeshi Shimotsuma from the Environmental Policy Bureau. From the city of Yokohama, Ms. Eriko Yakushiji, DG, Climate Change Policy Headquarters. From NPO, Chairperson of Hokkaido Green Fund, Mr. Toru Suzuki. From Terra Energy, CEO, Mr. Ryogo Takemoto. Thank you for joining us. As you can see, people have different clothing, somewhat, which indicates a different diverse background. If I may, I would like to start by asking questions. First of all, Chairman Suzuki, Mr. Suzuki, You are the chairperson of Hokkaido Green Fund. The citizens who are the members, they add on 5% to the monthly utility charges, and this is the Green Fund. It is literally a fund. So the citizens contribute, and you make the citizens windmills. In 2001, Hamakaze was the first windmill, which means beach wind, but not limited only to Hokkaido. You have expanded windmills made by citizens, but collecting contribution from the citizens and making it all across Japan, not at all easy. But can you tell us the secret of your success, please?
Hi.
Yes. We have two programs. One was just mentioned, a green electricity rate. Hokkaido Electric Power Company is involved, and residents as well. 5% extra fee is paid on top of electricity rate, and it's pooled so that it can fund wind turbines for wind power. Mezzanine, the other one, mezzanine equity investment program invested by citizens. So we ask citizens to make investments into that vehicle, and we pay out dividends out of the proceeds generated. Tohoku, Hokkaido, Center, and around those regions, we have 38 wind turbines, 80 megawatt citizens wind turbines we have today. The total amount of investment, 2.6 billion, over 4,000 citizens are investors of this. Local companies, NPOs, and cooperatives, we collaborate with them to pursue this initiative. What are the secrets? That was the question. Well, it's hard to answer. Those who want to participate in a scheme like this, there are a lot of people, as we found out. And so providing an opportunity to participate in this type of investment, if we can offer more opportunities, I'm sure more will participate from citizenry. 2001, we set up our first wind turbine, 18 years since. It was a 17-year investment program, so it ended last year. And we decided earlier that the minimum investment should be 500,000. But in 17 years, it's now 740,000. That's the minimum. And the return is about 11%. Not even once have we not paid dividends for the last 17 years. We always paid dividends, distributions. Hokkaido, Akita, Aomori, the same thing. So we've had this good track records that were helpful in getting trust and confidence from investors, the citizens. What is also important is, as a business operator, we have to have philosophy, which is good, and we have to run the SPC successfully because it's a business. Inclusive of maintenance of the facilities, you need to have the skills as a business operator.
Thank you. According to this slide, it says a cooperation with a variety of stakeholders. So not only NPOs, but the businesses, financial institutions working together, I understand, is the key.
Yes.
Thank you. May I invite Mr. Takemoto? Mr. Takemoto, obviously, he is from the Honkanji Saishoji Temple in Nara, the Pure Land sect. Together with other monks, he has started Terra Energy, which was launched June last year. Currently in the Chugoku region, mainly in temples and communities, he is spreading the use of renewables. My question: temples. We may not think immediately about temples when we think about utilities, but you are centering on temples to deal with climate warming. Can you tell us the significance, or are there any unique activities that temples can do?
My name is Takemoto. Before I answer your question, I would like to say something about the keynote speech, which was important. Mr. Topping said that investment into oil is like investing into typhoons that hit Japan. He said that, and listening to such remarks, I thought the following. Addressing environmental issues is about being involved in tackling the issue of human life. That was brought home. And upon saying that, I myself, frankly speaking, a year before I started Terra Energy, I never thought of I had never thought of environmental issues as my own issues. Rather, I was feeling hopeless and cynical, thinking that whatever I do is not going to be a lot of impact. But as I studied and as I met with many people in this area, I started to realize that there's something that I can do. There's a market developing where I can take action and have an impact. And that is why I was motivated to start something. So investing in coal is like investing in typhoons. Once you know that, I'm sure those who have conscience, those investors, will hesitate in making investments into coal. So having knowledge, knowing something is very crucial, because with knowledge, your actions and behaviors could change. So Terra Energy is an organization that lets people know that environmental issues are about issues of human life. Rather than thinking that you're helpless, you can't do anything to change the world, you let the authorities do everything, think that there's something that you can do and that it can make a change. And Terra Energy as a mechanism, we have 3 mechanisms. One, 3.5% of electricity charges are stocked and pooled as assets. We use the funding for tackling environmental issues and local causes. We make donations out of the fund. With a venture business, we collaborate. Power from renewables at 77%. We supply power using renewables, 77%, and market rates. Well, there's electricity market. I came to know about the power market, but then market-based prices, affordable and reasonable prices. At those prices, we try to supply power. So we want the citizenry to think about power and energy and renewables. Those are the activities we engage in. I think that is part of the mission of myself as a priest.
Thank you. I was strongly impressed with the keynote, the crisis of climate. It is imminent right in front of us. I was also moved by the keynote, like yourself, about the donation incorporated into the power charges. As you mentioned at the beginning, it is backed with your passion.
Yes. Electricity charges, when you switch or change that, you start to think about whether it's beneficial or not for you. That's important as a consideration, but beyond that, a small action on your part actually has relevance on society. What you do on a day-to-day basis could be beneficial for someone else in society. Vice versa, someone else does something good and you benefit from that. There's this link, and there are actions that you can take. So just by switching over to Terra Energy as a supplier, you will be able to do something beneficial for someone else, and that's something that we want to show.
Thank you, Mr. Sumotsuma. At the city of Kyoto, by 2050, net zero emission and 1.5 degrees is the target. Not quite a lot of local government authorities commit to do that in Japan. In December, 2 years ago, at the 20th anniversary of the Kyoto Protocol, there was the event, and to create sustainable city culture, Kyoto Declaration was announced as of May of this year. IPCC Assembly to convene in Kyoto to support this event has been announced, and because of this event, again, a 1.5 Kyoto appeal has been announced. So, to realize decarbonized city, I observe that you're extremely proactive in disseminating your information. So, can you tell us your feeling and the significance?
My name is Shimotsuma from the city of Kyoto. I said this again yesterday, and I was told to wear kimono once again from the mayor, so I'm playing my part. So achieved zero in 2050. It's a challenging target, but it's a global target. It's not a target that we can achieve on our own. And it's not a kind of target that only Kyoto should achieve. So for Kyoto to make contribution to this global challenge, I think there are two types of efforts that we need to make. First of all, Kyoto needs to be proactive to take on the challenge and to achieve. And the other is to increase the number of partners, increase the people whom we can work with to contribute to the globe, to the world. And we need to strengthen ourselves. Kyoto's challenge, we decided on 3 determinations, which was stated in May by the mayor, and this is something that is shared with the citizens of the city of Kyoto. The 3 determinations. First is to fulfill the responsibility for the future. In 2000, when we are in 2050, why did we not target 2050? Why did we not choose to target 1.5 instead of 2? And I want to make sure that future generation would not feel desperate. And we need to play the role of Kyoto, and we also need to be committed. So the 3 determinations, listening to the discussions among the business representatives, local governments or the governments tend to target something that is easily achieved. But when we face the climate crisis, as of today, Kyoto City has a history of 1,000 years, and there was no disruption of the culture. So, but if we're not able to achieve the target, we will not be able to sustain our culture. And this fact needs to be shared among the community, among the people living in Kyoto. So coming up with the measures first and then set the target, that is important. We do not have the tools yet, but we decide on the target. I think that is more important today. And contribution to the world. There's a word I would like to take away with you. On the left-hand side, IPCC Kyoto Guideline. On the left-hand side. Kyoto Protocol developed into Paris Agreement, and it's going to start next year. And the guideline for the execution of Paris Agreement was adopted in May this year. Research institutions, Japanese researchers made huge contributions. A Paris Agreement, when it is to be executed, once again, Japan is to make a huge contribution. To symbolize that, I'm sure that all of you have a lot of influence in the community, so please use that and communicate.
Thank you. So, responsibility for the future. In the youth session that we're about to have, this is going to be important. And you said that you have to be prepared, you have to be committed. You said in September, I participated in several events in Climate Week in New York, and there were representatives from local governments and corporations from around the world. They feel the same. They said that it's difficult to come up with a target for 2050 because it's long term, but you have to achieve it, and so you have to make commitments now, they said, and that struck a chord, and what you said is exactly that. So zero emission by 2050. Another question. So toward this target of zero emission by 2050, what specifically are you focusing on? That is something that I would like to ask next.
Towards 2050, what kind of pathway are going to design is exactly what we are working on right now. First of all, we need to share the target with the people living in Kyoto City. This is a newsletter of Kyoto City, which was distributed to 650,000 households in Kyoto City. It features climate change or climate crisis. So we share the target, and we list up the things that or actions that can be taken right away. But we will never be able to achieve the target if our initiatives are the extension of what we are doing today. So we are trying to get the wisdom, collect the wisdom from different stakeholders. We are having discussions. And this target has been set in our ordinance. It's not a plan, but it's part of our ordinance. So we need to have thorough discussions to identify the pathway together with people in the community as well as the business operators.
So collaboration within the local community, which is excellent.
So Yakushiji-san, next to you. City of Yokohama is also saying zero emission by 2050. Zero carbon Yokohama is the vision that Yokohama City has come up with. Under that vision, achieving a net zero emission by 2050 as one of the initiatives for that. You are having collaboration agreements with 12 municipalities in Tohoku region, the northern part of the mainland. By having such agreements, renewable power that is generated in Tohoku is procured by the city of Yokohama. So you're going beyond the boundaries of your own city. You're collaborating with 12 municipalities. That's broader. So what is the significance of collaborating with other municipalities? What is the objective?
Thank you very much. City of Yokohama declared zero carbon Yokohama. We are implementing different initiatives, but among those initiatives, transition to renewables is our major focus. But in the case of City of Yokohama, there are limitations to the amount of renewable energy we can generate in the city. So we need to procure from the outside. In February this year, we signed a collaboration agreement with 12 municipalities in Tohoku region. These 12 municipalities, we have maintained relationship since the big earthquake, and some of those municipalities contacted us when they found out about our initiative. We wanted to make achievements as early as possible, and thanks to support from different stakeholders, the wind power generation plant in Yokohama town of Aomori Prefecture, they started providing power to 6 business entities in the city of Yokohama. The photograph that I'm showing right now on the slide is the press conference that we held in the city of, in this town of Yokohama of Aomori Prefecture. It was a very good press conference, and because of the relationship that we were able to establish, we used to go to Tokyo Disneyland as they used to come to Tokyo Disneyland as part of their field trip from the middle school students, and they decided that they would add the city of Yokohama as a destination. And Okawa Printing, a business entity, made a speech after him, and they are printing a wrapping paper of Chinese dumpling lunchbox, and since they are using seafood from other parts of Tohoku region, he said that he would consider using scallop from that town. And another company talked about. Another company is to make a speech and encouraged the middle school students if they are to come to field trip to Yokohama City, visit Hikamawa, which is a ship. So we felt that there are a lot of opportunities and possibilities in the future, which we strongly felt during the press conference. Going forward, we would like to explore and increase the number of businesses in the city of Yokohama who are willing to use renewable energy. And also, we were able to get a cooperation from a utility company, but I'm sure that we can think of different schemes as well. So developing different schemes is another initiative that we need to implement.
Thank you. So you're one of Okawa is one of the 6 business operators.
4 companies went to a town of Yokohama. The gentleman in the middle made that speech.
So what becomes important going forward is how to develop businesses who are willing to use renewables. You need to look for more of that. Any specific plan or idea for that?
We inquired different businesses in the city of Yokohama, but unexpectedly, they showed interests. Businesses are interested in CO2 reduction, but also transition to renewables. And some of them even mentioned that this could be a business opportunity, which was extremely encouraging for us.
Thank you. So businesses within the city of Yokohama, if their demand for renewables increases, as was mentioned in the earlier session, additionality could increase with new capacity coming on stream and more supply of renewable energy. Thank you. So next, Suzuki-san and Takemoto-san, I would like to ask the following questions of them. Zero emission is part of the theme of this session. So in order to achieve zero emission within the community, based on your experience, what do you think are the requirements? What are the conditions? And what are the challenges, on the other hand? From your experience, what are they? If you could comment. May I start with Suzuki-san? Yes. Renewables. Renewable energy. Our initiative is such that, be it mega solar or wind power, basically, those large companies headquartered in Tokyo, they look at wind and solar power in localities. They utilize such renewables, and they profit from that. They send the profit to Tokyo. That is the cycle or the structure. Well, market has to be reasonable. So large companies as players is important. But is that all? No. I think we have to see initiative from the community rising. There has to be a right balance between what large companies do and what the communities do. Otherwise, this will not grow. So initiatives that's done based on the capitals available in the communities. So local initiatives, as I call them, are important. As is mentioned in the earlier panel, local grid restrictions, there's no spare capacity in transmission lines to accommodate renewable energy. Although momentum is rising, it's not translating into a tangible outcome. METI is studying this, and I'm sure they will come up with measures, but that is the issue that we have to overcome. And FIT, graduation from FIT. And so solar and wind power will have to be more competitive. And purchase price is declining. Part of FIT's objective is for it to be eliminated ultimately. And small-sized projects will have increasing difficulty because there will no longer be FIT. So we have to be creative, have joint collective purchasing, perhaps a cooperative of some sort needs to be formed within the community. Well, thank you. So one community, one locality
alone can do only so much. So collaboration amongst and between municipalities and communities should be broadened. Thank you. Next, Takemoto-san. This is relevant to what Suzuki-san just said. So large units of nations, administrations, large companies, if they change, that could be powerful. But on the other hand, for each individual person to be aware and change, that has impact too. Centering around our temples, we are trying to persuade people to use renewables. But the first reaction is pushback. It's resistance. They would say, no, no thanks for us. But then, on the other hand, there are those who are willing to take time to think about the future. And when they think about the future, they realize the importance of renewables and break away from nuclear power. When we try to persuade them, and take time with them, a lot of people ultimately understand. So it may take time, but we want people to understand so that they become aware of the threat in the future if nothing is done. Through dialogue, persuasion can be made. But having said so, isn't it just an environmental business? Someone's going to profit from it, and that's why renewables is being promoted. And why not fossil fuels? There are lots of people who are still skeptical, and so unilateral information provision is not going to work. It has to be a dialogue. We may provide information, try to persuade, but we have to accept their questions and concerns and try to respond to them in good faith. And with that dialogue, I think people's awareness can change. Buddhism is about enlightenment. It's about awakening. By getting the right information, you are awakened. You become aware, and that changes the person's behavior. And Buddhism focuses a lot on that aspect. And that is exactly the step necessary. So temples, who are said to be the most conservative in society, and the priests and the monks, if we can change, I think the whole nation can change. Thank you. Let's move on to the next question addressed to the local governments represented here, Yakushiji-san. So in order for zero emission to be tackled with the initiative of the community, there's a role to be played by the local government, and there's a role only a local government can play. So if you could please comment on that.
There are two things I would like to say. First is focusing on the things that only local governments can do. Local governments have its fields, means we are closest to the businesses as well as citizens. So to realize decarbonization, people say that there is a need for innovation. But innovation is not only technology. It could be our lifestyles. It could be social systems. It covers a wide range of things. And we are saying that the biggest strength of the city of Yokohama is the power that the citizens have. With the power of citizens, we have solved many problems and issues related to the city. So there will be a need to experiment different innovations, and we need fields for that. And we will be able to provide experiment fields in cooperation with the citizens and businesses operating in the city of Yokohama. And that, I believe, is the biggest strength of the city of Yokohama. And the other is the big responsibility of a local government. As was mentioned in the keynote speech, there were very tough comments made. But is there a lot of momentum for decarbonization among local governments in Japan? Not very much, is the answer. So what I feel these days is that sharing the sense of crisis, I believe, is very important. But that alone would not lead to long-term initiatives. So beyond decarbonization, there is the wonderful future. So the initiative would lead to improved quality of life and also improvement in the people's lives. So if we don't change the mindset, we'll not be able to make a progress. So local governments, which is close to the citizens, we are responsible to raise the awareness among the citizens.
Thank you. So the community, locality, that's the theme of this session. And those represented here who represent organizations outside of the organization, that we are all citizens, members of the community. And the power of each citizen could amass and become a wonderful force for mitigating climate change and promoting renewables. Shimotsuma-san, what is it that local government can do uniquely? The local assembly must be addressing this in the community, and what do you expect from them?
The power of the citizens, the power of the community is supporting all of these initiatives. I absolutely agree. And sharing the sense of crisis, and at the same time, we need to have a picture of a bright future ahead of us. And the City Council, in the municipality discussions at the council, as well as endorsement of City Council, is extremely important. The members of City Councils are very close to the citizens, so they are able to collect the voices of the citizens. They can be very tough, but we can improve. We can provide, come up with better policies. So, with regards to the City Council, I have an announcement. Yesterday, we had a resolution yesterday. Climate crisis. Now that we made a resolution that we recognize that we are facing the climate crisis. So we would require climate change-related actions, being aware of the fact that we are facing climate crisis. So different ways of sharing the sense of crisis on a daily basis. We can use the newsletter that was mentioned earlier. So just like in other parts of the world, they're doing making declarations. But the resolution that we made yesterday is probably the Japanese version of sharing the sense of crisis among the citizens. I think this is a way of sharing. So after the mayor announced the zero by 2050, the council members are engaged in different discussions on climate change, and the members have done their own researches, and they're making recommendations and suggestions. 90. We need to save energy because non-renewable energy source usage is about 90% in Kyoto, and also we need to do the energy saving as well as increase the amount of renewable energy used in the city in Kyoto City. Thank you.
Thank you. So very timely information. That resolution was passed yesterday. Thank you for sharing that. We have 5 minutes left. I would like to ask the same question to all of you. As climate measures are promoted, the locality, the community is important for each and every individual. Going forward, within the locality, within the community, for those who have the aspiration to start initiatives, you are already there. You are already engaged in activities. So what messages can you impart them? Let's from Shimotsuma-san.
2050 zero is a challenging target, but what we should not forget is to target at 0% is something that's been agreed upon by the world. So in the city of Kyoto, we have sister cities like Paris and Boston. They have the same target, which is encouraging for us. More than 100 cities around the world set the challenging target just like us. But we are trying to find a way to reach that target. To target a net zero emission, we would like to increase the number of municipalities who set the same target. We would like to share the best practices and failures and learnings. and we would like to work together. To put it in one word, let us work together. People say that there's going to be increased number of people living in the big cities. City of Yokohama is always trying to come up with a new big city model. And we would like to communicate the model to the world to contribute to achieve SDGs as well as decarbonization. And to do that, we need to have partnerships. So let us work together. Thank you.
Yes. To achieve zero emission, the government is saying that renewables should be 22%, 24%. I think it should be higher. And for that to happen, Hokkaido's renewable resources have to be leveraged for the whole of the nation. So, City of Kyoto, City of Yokohama, and Tokyo Metropolitan Government is here as well. So, those of you in urban centers, please purchase renewable energy from Tohoku and Hokkaido. So that's one thing. If there are those of you from local cities, local areas, in your local community, local area, let's create and generate renewable energy together. I've been doing this for 20 years. There have been lots of difficulties, but I've enjoyed the past 2 decades thoroughly. So let's relax and enjoy. And work together. As Terra Energy, in 3 years' time, we would like to start micro hydro power projects, and so I hope to seek partnerships for that. Well, I myself have had to make business decisions, all sorts of decisions, and I don't have children myself. But those children's generation, grandchildren's generation, when I see them, I imagine when I pass away. And can I say that I've done my very best for the future generation? I want to say that to the future generation, and that's become my motivation. What is happiness? There are surveys about happiness. Happiness is not about being told by someone else or being controlled by someone else. You have to understand, you have to decide on your own. Sure, there could be advantages, disadvantages that you may want to weigh economically, what's in it for you, but then you have to understand what's important to you, and you have to make your own choice and take action. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, a micro hydropower, mini hydro. Well, a new collaboration could be in the making soon for that. So, one community, one locality alone may not do a lot, but by collaboration and partnership, we may be able to do something substantial. So, I hope that you will take away some hints for such collaborations today. With that, we would like to close this panel discussion. Once again, thank you to the panelists.